Hello, Ways and Means. It is still Friday, April 24th. It is 10:35. We are picking up H 902, an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the city of Barry, and we have Tucker Anderson here with us in the Zoom to tell us about it. Tucker, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel. I believe that you are scheduled to start with H 902, which is the City of Barry Charter Amendments. And I will pull them up. They're very quick to explain here. That looks great. So there's two operative sections to the charter amendments. The first adds some signatory agents to the section of the charter that authorizes the sale or lease of city property. And all they're doing here is adding the city manager or members of the city council as agents that are authorized to sign those sales agreements. And then the second instance of amendment, you may remember last year, this committee did some work on unassigned fund balances. You incorporated that into the general municipal law that's available to any municipality to carry over unexpended funds in a special balance at the end of the fiscal year, and then to put that fund to any purpose designated by the legislative body in the future. Well, the city of Barry already had that authority in their charter, but you'll notice here that it's limited to, under the current terms, 5% of the city's general fund. And the amendment here increases that to 10% and then adds some language clarifying that it's 10% of the city general fund budget expenses for the most recent voter approved fiscal year. That's the cap for this unexpended fund balance. And current charter terms, any amount remaining in excess of that has to be used in subsequent budgets to reduce the tax rate. And that is all that is within H 902.
Thanks. Any questions for Tucker? Would the representative from Barry City like to say anything?
He doesn't have questions.
Okay. Is there any fiscal impact to the state?
There is absolutely.
And what is your name?
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions about this charter? Anyone need anything before a vote?
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to find H 902 favorable.
Thank you. Representative Vossback moves H 902 favorable. Any discussion? Seeing none, so clerk, please call the roll. Representative Brannigan?
Yes.
Although yes, is Representative Burkhart, Representative Higley,
Yes.
Representative Folka,
Yes.
Representative Kimball,
Yes.
Representative Maslin,
Yep.
Representative Odie is not here, Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Wazazak,
Yes.
Representative Canfield,
Yes.
and Representative Kornheiser. Yes. We have found the bill favorable 10-0-1. Thank you. Representative Wazazak, would you like to report this? That would be my sentence. Full sentence. Great. And then moving on to S 232. Tucker Anderson.
Oh, he's back.
All right, S 232, a little bit more lengthy than H 902, but we can still move through this fairly efficiently. So I'll actually start with you all, page 2, section 2, and I will pull my screen up again, since I know that's the committee's preferred procedure here. So after designating Vermont Libraries Day as the third Monday in the month of October, S 232 starts to move into some grant program and funding language. In section 3, 16 VSA, section 51, which is the Universal After School and Summer Special Fund, I believe that the committee knows about this fund and what it does and what purposes it's assigned for. What the amendments to section 51 do here primarily is to call out public library schools and volunteer mentoring programs as eligible recipients. So all of these programs are already eligible recipients. but it was not clear to those in the world, particularly those who would be applying as libraries, that they did qualify. And additionally, there was apparently some complicated application processes that also took a lot of time to complete. So the amendments in this section call out the libraries and some of these other programs, require the agency of education, allow the Agency of Education to allocate a portion of the funds annually to the Department of Libraries for the purpose of providing sub-grants to public libraries, and permits coalitions or groups of public libraries to apply for grants under this section of law. In a subsequent subdivision, the Agency of Education is mandated to create a simple application and reporting process to reduce barriers to the grant program for community-based organizations such as public libraries. The state librarian is added as a member of the advisory committee that advises the Secretary of Education on the use of the grant program funds. And finally, there's a new requirement for public input in the advisory committee's process.
When you say similar organizations in E, would small rural elementary schools constitute similar organizations, or are we creating a different standard of care for different sectors?
Fantastic question. I don't know if they would qualify as community-based organizations, but certainly something that I can circle back with you on. The exemplary clause that follows calls out non-educational nonprofit organizations such as public libraries and the mentoring programs. So the way that that clause is stacked and structured, it doesn't expressly include schools, which would likely fall under the existing program guidelines in all of the other subdivisions that precede D, and likely would also fall under the existing application process, which is partially governed by federal law requirements and are slightly more complicated and are used by the educational corporations in the state. And I can send you the information that was submitted to the Senate Education Committee by both the Agency of Education and the Advisory Committee, if that would be helpful.
Are you aware if they'll be held to the same accountability for outcomes, or is this a different?
Yes, provided that those are the statutory requirements that you're talking about. So the preceding subdivisions all still apply to the programs that are eligible for the grants under this section of law. That would be subdivisions A through D. Non-discrimination being an example that's called out in the contracts for the summer and after school programs. The requirements that are built into the application process that largely relate to simultaneous federal funding, no. Because the libraries in these small community-based organizations would not be going through that federal grant process. They would be applying exclusively for these state-based funds.
Can you tell us how is the funding in this particular funding stream? How has that changed in the last couple of years compared to, say, the funding available for the school-based programs that have to comply with the 21C requirements?
So if you take a look at the report that the advisory committee and AOE put together, I believe annually, and it was submitted to some of the other committees of jurisdiction, the state level funding, all the same pool for these organizations. Another thing that I would note for purposes of your question is that almost all of the grants, at least from what I could tell in the report, went through educational corporations anyway. Even if the program was eventually administered by a nonprofit corporation, if you go through the list of grant recipients, it appears that all of them are school districts. So difficult to answer the question.
Tucker, again, going up to that number 2 where it talks about the agency may allocate a portion of the funds. That's pretty open-ended as far as what a portion means. Was there any discussion about that?
Yes, Representative Higley. In fact, there was. As this bill passed out of the Senate Education Committee, there was actually a required percentage that had to be dedicated specifically to library programming. So Senate Education passed out a version of this that required 5% of the monies in this fund to go to libraries and library programming. And the Senate ultimately, in the Senate Appropriations Committee, changed this language to make it discretionary, to not name the amount that would be used. And instead of requiring the money to go to the libraries, it allowed the Department of Libraries to essentially stand in place of the library applicants to apply for perhaps a larger sum of money than the individual public libraries would be applying for, and then to grant subgrants. But there is no mandate here that the agency allocate any amount of the funds to library, summer, and after-school programs. There's no minimum amount. It's discretionary and uses the phrase "a portion."
Just to follow up on that, so I'm sure there's a limited amount each year, and is it on a first come, first served basis, or is it up to the discretion of the agency?
I don't know the answer to that question because I don't understand the nuance, just because I wasn't a part of those presentations and conversations that came from the advisory committee when they were in Senate Education. You can take a look at the report. I'm happy to send it to the committee once we're off and see some of the decision-making process.
Okay, thank you, Tucker.
There.
What else is in the bill, Tucker? Oh, I'm
What
so
else
sorry.
is in the
Representative
bill?
Page has a question.
Yes, section 5, page 5, on number 2, item 2, a digital or physical collection of federal documents. Could you describe that? Tell us a little more about it. Is there a cost to maintaining such a collection? How large is such a collection? I'm just curious.
Yes, I'm happy to get there. I will just quickly note that there's another grant program in section 4 that we haven't gotten to.
Yeah,
And
let's
Okay.
jumping so far ahead.
I apologize.
it's okay. There was only about 10 seconds of walkthrough that was skipped there. All I note is that the amendment is in a section related to discretionary grants for early education programming, and that there's no substantive change here. It adds including clauses for training for public library staff as an eligible use of these discretionary grants. And in subsection B, expressly calls out public libraries, and this is a theme of S232. They already qualified under, community organizations and other public agencies, but express call out so that the libraries know that they are included as an eligible applicant. Now for
Representative, hold on 1 second. So you have a question about section 4?
Yeah.
And your question, Representative Page, is about section 5?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Before you go on, what is a voluntary early education program? I've never heard that phrasing used before. What's an
Something-
involuntary early ed program? It's another way to ask it.
It's something that I'm not familiar with. Happy to follow up with you afterwards to find out if there's any definition around this section for what a voluntary early education program is.
And that's existing statute, Tucker?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
So section 5, hot topic, the digital or physical amendments. This entire section relates to duties of the Department of Libraries, and the update here really just ensures that digital collections are contemplated within this entire section related to the duties of the department. So it doesn't add a mandate for preserving everything as digital and physical. It just allows the department the flexibility to maintain these collections in either a digital or physical form, depending on what is appropriate. So that's really all this language is doing. And an example of digital or physical collections of federal documents, when we're taking a look at, for example, copies of the federal code, it is perhaps less expensive to have a subscription access to the federal code through a database like LexisNexis or Westlaw or another digital service than it is to order copies, physical copies of the federal code on an annual subscription basis. So that's the type of discretionary authority that's coming into play here. The only other thing to note here, and I'm shocked that this wasn't the question that had come up, is that service by mail or book wagon is struck later on in the section and replaced with references to interlibrary loan.
I bet that was fun for you, Tucker.
It broke my heart. I was a book wagon addict in Sandusfield, Massachusetts when I was in elementary school. So, all right.
And then section 6.
Section 6, this is a statutory construction update to ensure that the definition of public libraries for purposes of this section is not construed to allow legislative bodies of municipalities to appoint the members of privately established, chartered, or incorporated libraries. Section 7, a little bit of money involved here. Doesn't change anything substantively, but it ensures that libraries are called out for purposes of municipal bonding. Public libraries and municipal libraries already were included and eligible as bonded debt for purposes of infrastructure improvements, but this provides an express call out so that municipalities know that they can bond for improvement of their public libraries. And then right at the end, a fund is repealed, the audio visual revolving fund. I know Ted was in the room. I still don't know how much money was in here, but this fund only contained the receipts from postage for mailing certain audio visual materials from libraries, and that was like DVDs, CD-ROMs, things like that. So I
It's a
can't
narrow
imagine it was,
special fund.
yeah, I can't imagine
you.
it was a lot of money.
And the vote of the committee, Tucker, do you happen to know that offhand?
Which it's made many stops, but I believe in House Education, it was a unanimous vote for the members who were there.
Thank you, Tucker. Yeah, Representative Copeland.
On the bonding language, did they ever discuss a clawback mechanism for any public investment in a private facility?
So I'm actually not sure about that. You know, most of what you're looking at in the bonding structure is existing language and existing authority. I can take a look through the current section of law related to privately established public libraries and whether there is any sort of clawback that is involved there, if that would be helpful.
Thanks, Tucker. Any other questions for Tucker? Okay. Thank you, Tucker. Barnett, you're up.
Good morning. Chuck Barnett, Joint Fiscal Office. So not much in the way of direct fiscal impacts. What the fiscal note does primarily at this point is provides context on the amount of cannabis sales tax revenue that goes into the universal after school and summer. Yes.
Great.
Universal After School and Special Summer Fund. And so showing those revenues estimated through the January 26th consensus revenue forecast. It's about 10 to 11. It's $10 million right now. It'll be about 11 million in 2031 estimated, way out there. And right, the language, as Tucker went through, right, specified that the Agency of Education may allocate a certain portion of those revenues to the Department of Libraries for grant funding. I provided in the fiscal note a tiny bit of context on grant funding through that program. I can't speak too well to the process of Representative Higley, but I do understand it's more of a competitive process that they run every year. And in fiscal year 25, they awarded $2.4 million to programs and centers. And each, they refer to it as a cohort. So in each fiscal year, they choose a certain cohort of awardees, programs and centers, and those receive funding over multiple fiscal years. And so if you stack cohorts every fiscal year, the amount of funding that will be obligated will increase. But with the first two cohorts, $10.5 million in funding is obligated in the year 2030. But absolutely, between Tucker and myself, we'll make sure you get a report if you're curious about more specifics on how that grant program operates. The two other pieces is we did check in on the early education grants in 16 BSA 4041, emailing with Sean Cousineau. He said that it's not currently an active grant program, it's a voluntary grant program, and they don't make grants through that section of statute. So although it expands the scope, it's not currently an operating program. And then the audiovisual revolving fund is not a state special fund, so we don't have visibility into how much money is left over, but it would repeal its postage. So
You don't know how much money's in there?
don't know how, I could ask the Department of Library, but it's not a state special fund. So I would have to ask them directly.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Point of establishing or expanding the scope of a program that doesn't operate.
I am not sure. You'd have to ask folks who are earlier in the process, but yes, we just wanted to make sure, right, that wasn't, yes, that there wasn't any granting being made for that section.
Any other questions for Ted? Thank you. Representative Brown is here, who's the reporter for the bill from education. Do folks have questions for her? I can ask her to come sit here. Okay, seeing none, thank you for making that trip up the stairs. Donna, I could do that.
It was a brilliant.
Okay. In that case, I would love a motion to find this favorable.
Sure.
Give Representative Wozniak,
I'll
yes.
make a motion to find it as two favorable of.
You. Representative Wozniak finds, so we find SB 32 favorable. Any discussion? Seeing none, the clerk, can please call the roll.
Representative Brannigan?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Is Representative Burkhart, Representative Higley,
Yes.
Representative Holcomb, Representative Kimball,
Yes.
Representative Maslin?
Yeah.
Representative Odie is not here. Representative Page,
Yes.
Representative Wozniak,
Yes.
Representative Canfield,
Yes.
Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
We have voted the bill favorable, 9-1-1.
Thank you. Can you report this? Thank you everyone for a solid week. Next, we will be back here on Tuesday after lunch. Our work for next week will include whatever bills come from other committees. I have no idea what they are right now. Please do be following your bills in the Senate. We should be receiving the miscellaneous tax bill and the yield bill late next week from the Senate. Please take a look at how they've amended them in committee, but the floor has not happened yet, so all change is still possible. And then we'll continue work on our committee bill next week as well. Thank you.